Hello and happy Friday. Hope you are having a great one, getting ready for your weekend. My name is Scott Shantz. I'm filling in for Jill today. And do you think that our military should be the people who take care of national emergencies for us? We had a huge, crazy, terrible wildfire season this summer. The military got involved. When there's floods, they get involved. Whenever anything happens, the military gets involved, which is good. I'm glad that they do. We need to, full court press when that stuff happens. But what about a national emergency response team? Does it feel like we need one of those? Does it feel like maybe the military should be focusing on military stuff? There's a conversation happening around that right now nationally. And here to weigh in is Ken McMullen. He's a fire chief in Red Deer, Alberta, and president of the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs. Thanks so much for taking some time to talk to us today, Ken. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thanks so much for your interest in the story.
Yeah, of course. So, we don't have a national emergency response team, right? There's nobody that does that across Canada. That's not a service that we have right now.
We currently don't have a national, what we will call a national fire administration, as an example. Other countries that you're familiar with, United States, Japan, Australia, do utilize national fire administration type formats in their federal government. We do not have that in Canada. You are correct.
And so when a national emergency happens, is it basically okay if the local people can't handle it, call the military?
A lot of emergencies start.
Oh, Ken?
Have I lost you there?
No, I'm here. You cut out just for a second there. You said a lot of emergencies start, and then we lost you.
Oh, there you go. Well, they start at the municipal level. Mm-hmm. So our municipal often are our firefighters, with the greatest of respect to our colleagues in police and paramedicine. Our fire departments are primarily the number one group that responds to all hazards within our communities. And so there's a lot of communications and relationships between other province and territories. We don't, as the municipalities, make the call for whether or not Canadian Armed Forces are called in to support.
Okay, so what happens, we had a huge, fire season, you would know firsthand, of course, how difficult it was. What difference would having a national team, a national emergency response make? How dramatic would the difference be?
Well, if we use the comparators of the other countries that use this type of model, it's a huge difference from that collaboration, coordination perspective of just getting resources where they need to be. As you mentioned, the wildfire season of 2023 was one like we've never seen before. And unfortunately, the reality is that 2024 isn't looking a whole lot better. So we've got some work ahead of us, and the Canadian Fire Chiefs have gone on record for advocating for a national fire administration and think that these are really good examples of why it would be beneficial.
And would it be made up, like you guys, the fire chiefs are all in favor of it, would it be made up of the current fire departments and the emergency personnel that we have working together? Or is this an entire new service that, new employees, new hires that would work with you guys?
Well, I think that all options are on the table, and we are prepared to stand shoulder to shoulder with our elected officials to determine the best model for Canada. We certainly are thankful that the options are even being considered at the federal level right now. It has not been considered in the past, so these are all positive changes, and we will work together to determine best practices. We have authored a report out of the Canadian Fire Chiefs that looks at different models, and there's not the exact model that's perfect for Canada. So let's work together to determine what that model is.
Yeah, I really like that. That's such a positive outlook on this thing. You're right. I mean, I don't know anything about fighting a forest fire. I'm really glad that we have people like you to do that. But it does seem like it's getting worse, sort of season by season. And we should do our best to get in front of this, right now. And Harjit Sajjan has said that we are likely going to get some version of this emergency response team nationally, whatever that looks like. But let's just get started, right? As opposed to trying to back and forth, figure out what it is. So let me ask you this. The military still helps out. And of course, in some contexts, they might still help out. This isn't saying that we won't use the military. It's like you say, let's put all the options on the table. Let's figure out what's going to work best. It'll be different things in different situations, in different places. bases. But what is it like when the military comes in and tries to integrate with firefighters? I imagine there has to be some like learning curve or, kind of logistical like hiccups or speed bumps there. Or is it like, do they know what they're doing? Smooth move. Explain that to me.
Well, again, and every situation is a little bit different. I've been very fortunate to work with our esteemed colleagues in the Canadian Armed Forces in the past, whether that be in flood situations in southern Alberta, whether that be in wildfires here in Alberta as well. Our military does a tremendous job of supporting what we are doing on the front lines. I think the challenge is, although the Canadian Armed Forces has firefighters amongst the rank system, that is not who is being deployed to assist in natural disasters. It is men and women that typically come with a very specific task at hand, and so there is some conversations that have to take place. There's some learning on both sides of the command structure as far as who are you getting your reports from, who are you getting your directions from. And so it takes time to integrate our armed force colleagues when we're working in the types of events that municipal officials typically lead. Wildfires, floods, natural disasters are often led municipally, supported by provinces and feds.
Okay. Ken, what else do fire chiefs and emergency responders need from governments, both locally and nationally, to help respond to emergencies like this in our country?
Yeah, great question. And you're just off the heels of a very big week that we spent in Ottawa last week. I talked to one of your colleagues last week when I was in Ottawa. And I'm going to change the subject because you've opened the door to the question. We were there asking for three primary things. One of them is exactly what we just talked about, which is the creation of a National Fire Administration. So I won't get further into that other than anywhere a municipality wants to support that, we're gonna take your support and run with it. We talked about the re-implementation of the JEP funding, which is the Joint Emergency Preparedness Program, which was a fund through the federal government available up until 2013 that was used by municipalities to apply for specialty training and specialty equipment. So we've asked governments to reconsider putting that back into play. Last, and certainly not of least importance, is the increase to the volunteer firefighter tax credit. Currently sits at $3,000 annually, and we've asked the federal government to consider increasing that to $10,000 annually. So those are really the topics on the table right now that we're putting front of mind to our elected officials.
Okay, well, I will say that all of those seem like very realistic, practical, doable things that I think would make a difference. More volunteer firefighters, more resources, and more training for people who are going to come up against this stuff, because like we've sort of talked about, it's not going away, and it's something that our country is going to have to grapple with in the coming months and years. But I am glad that we have people like yourself and all of the brave, great firefighters, military, and emergency personnel across the country that do that. So Ken, thank you, and thank you for coming on this afternoon and sharing some information with us. Really appreciate your time today.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for covering the story. You and your listeners stay safe and enjoy a safe holiday season.